Hello everyone, Charles Watts here. Welcome to another edition of Inside Arsenal. It is Tuesday. Hope you're all well wherever you're watching or listening to this show around this world of ours. I hope you can hear me all right. It is about 10:30 in the morning here in the UK, and as you can probably see by the lighting, it's like I'm recording this in the middle of the night. It's gone so dark and it is absolutely tipping it down. And the noise the rain is making just outside coming down is it's like we're in the middle of a storm. So I hope you can hear me all right, and I hope you are having a decent start to your week. Plenty to talk about today, even though we are in the middle of international break. I did want to start by saying in yesterday's show, I said that I was going to be sitting down with James Benge to record Inside Arsenal Extra Time today. I did that while completely forgetting the fact that James has in fact been in Germany on a work trip, watching Bayer Leverkusen and Granit Xhaka, who he's been talking to, and is not going to be back until tomorrow, Wednesday. So, yeah, there is no Inside Arsenal Extra Time being recorded today. It is being recorded tomorrow. But all of the responses you sent into yesterday's show, with all of your comments in terms of what player you would like Arsenal to sign if they could just sign one in January, don't worry, they're still there. I'm collecting them all, and I'll still include them in the show with James, which is now going to be recorded tomorrow. So yeah, apologies for that. I got that a little bit wrong. Totally forgot the fact he'd headed over to Leverkusen for that game. Right, let's get going today. Plenty to discuss. We've got Aaron Ramsdale, whose dad has been talking on the Highbury Squad YouTube channel, which I will drop a link down below in the description to the video where I've sat down with Aaron's dad and spoke to him about a wide range of topics, of course, about Aaron and David Raya, Aaron's position. Now, it's a really, really good interview, and there's lots of interesting stuff that was said. I'll go through just a couple of bits here, but please do click on the link below in the description and go and watch it, because it's very, very insightful and telling in terms of what Aaron's dad has been talking about. So Nick was on the show with Sophie, with Kevin Campbell. Of course, Highbury Squad, fantastic channel, which I've been on. Please do give them go and subscribe to them if you don't already and watch their stuff. It's really, really good. But yeah, they were sitting down with Nick and they were talking about Aaron's situation, and Nick was very, very open on it, as he always is whenever Nick is involved in anything. It's just the kind of personality and character that he is, and there's some interesting stuff from it. He said, I think probably the big headline was it. He says Aaron's lost that smile to when he was holding onto that ball at this moment in time, and it is difficult. It's a really difficult to see him there, and we all keep saying to him, you need to keep smiling. He sort of carried on about the situation he's in now. He said that Aaron is going to be the cup goalkeeper and David Raya is going to be the main man unless something happens, an injury or a sending off. Aaron's got to live with that, and he is living with that, even though he's not been told it by anybody. You've got to give the guy a chance, for God's sake. He's talking about David Raya there. Even though the way it's been done, in my eyes, it's been wrong, and we can talk about that, but it is the decision. Really and truly, we've got to get behind David Raya. He's part of the family now, whether it's until only May or June next year. It won't be. It will be longer in my eyes, but that's by the by. He spoke about lots of other stuff as well. Talked about Aaron signing his new contract just before David Raya arrived, basically hinted that he wouldn't have been signing that contract, or it wouldn't have made much sense to sign that contract had they known that David Raya was going to be coming in straight away after that. And yeah, it's really interesting stuff from Nick. It'd be interesting what Mikel Arteta thinks of it. Whether it goes down too well at Arsenal, that remains to be seen. But it was a really interesting sort of sit-down chat with Nick. And it's no surprise, is it, that, yeah, Aaron lost that smile of his at the moment. We know, we see it if you're watching this on YouTube, the big smile that he's got on there. He is that kind of character. He's that kind of personality. And he will be finding this very, very difficult. And there's lots of people who think he's been very unfairly treated. Obviously, Nick, his dad, is one of them by what he says there when he says the way it's been done has been wrong. And I'm sure a lot of people agree with that. But as Nick says, David Raya is now number one, like it or lump it. It's pretty obvious that is the case, and it's going to stay the case probably for the long term. And, I've had my say on the whole Ramsdale thing and how I think this all plays out. I'd be very surprised if it ends up with Ramsdale still being here next season. I think I just can't see it. It just doesn't feel sustainable to me. And as Nick says himself, he doesn't think Raya will only be here till May and June on this loan. He thinks it'll be a long-term thing. And I think everyone else pretty much agrees with him. So one of them's going to have to go. And unfortunately, I think that's going to end up being Aaron Ramsdale. But yeah, please do go and have, spend 20 minutes, 30 minutes watching this show. The link is down in the description below. Really worth watching. Some really interesting stuff from Nick Ramsdale there on his son, Aaron. All right. The Gabriel Jesus injury farce continues. He has gone to Brazil. They have made him go over to Brazil to link up with the national team. I had my saying this yesterday, how I thought this should all play out. It didn't play out the way I was hoping it was going to, and it certainly didn't play out the way that just been totally distracted by just how heavy the rain is out there at the moment. It's absolutely biblical the way it's coming down. It didn't play out very well at all in terms of Arsenal's point of view. He has had to go all the way over to South America. He has linked up. Well, actually, I think he's arriving today, or he'll be linking up with the squad today. Brazil determined to have their look at him and assess this injury that has kept him out since the Sevilla game. Of course, Arsenal would have much rather he'd stayed in London, continued his recovery and rehabilitation there, but Brazil were determined, having called him up in the squad, to get him over there and to look at him. The doctor has just actually been talking. I've just got these quotes now from Rodrigo Lasmar, who is the Brazil team's doctor, and he's been talking about why Jesus has been called up, and he's kind of hinted at it, not so much to play, it's so that the group can all be together during the international break, which is all well and good, but to be flying someone halfway across the world who's been suffering with a hamstring injury, he hasn't played for 3 weeks, just to do that, it makes no sense to me, especially an experienced player like Gabriel Jesus, who has been around the Brazil squad for years now. You know, what difference is that seriously going to make? But this is what he's had to say. It's what he's been telling reporters just now. Rodrigo Lasmar, he says, we have been following the player's situation since he was injured. We have maintained contact with the player and with Arsenal. We know that he has been recovering from a muscle injury to the back of his right thigh and has already started working on his physical adaptation on the field. But the fact that we bring the player is Diniz's philosophy. Diniz is obviously the Brazil coach, bringing the whole group, having all of the players close. The player has not yet arrived, and I have not yet evaluated him. I will provide a more detailed position, but as soon as he arrives, he will undergo all of the evaluations, and we will continue this final phase of the player's rehab. We have not made any decisions about when he will play, but it is important to have him close. A couple of things there. Again, I've heard myself say, I don't think the whole we've got to have him close. I just don't buy that. This is Gabriel Jesus you're talking about. It's not a player that you're just getting used to or anything like that. It's Gabriel Jesus. You know what he brings. You know what he will add to the squad. What his character is like. His personality is like. There's no real genuine excuse, I think, to fly an injured player halfway around the world just so that he can be close to the squad. That's not going to do Jesus any good, and it's certainly not going to do his club any good. And look, the club is the thing that is paying his wages for me. So I'm not sure Brazil are in a really good position to do that, to bring a player halfway around the world just to do that. In terms of where he says he will undergo all the evaluations and we will continue the final phase of the player's rehabilitation. Again, I'm not sure that's really Brazil's place to do that. That's surely Arsenal's place. They're the club paying his wages. He's the player who's going to be playing for them for the majority of the season. Surely the final phase of a player's rehab, which has been really carefully managed by the club, should be done at the club rather than chucking him on a plane, albeit on first class or business class, taking him all the way over to South America. It just for me, it just feels like you're putting a player unnecessarily at risk. And I just think that's wrong. I really do think it just feels totally like a bit of a farce to me. I just don't understand it. And it just feels a little bit petty. I said that yesterday. This feels like the Brazil coach is doing this. Brazil are doing this just because of what happened with Martinelli last time out. And that is not, it just feels like it's a lack of trust, clearly a lack of trust between Brazil and Arsenal now after that Martinelli incident. And, I can understand Brazil feeling a little bit annoyed by what happened last time, but I'm not sure you should be unnecessarily putting a player's health and fitness at risk. And that's what this trip feels like it's doing of Gabriel Jesus. Now, Gabriel Jesus, obviously, does the player have a responsibility here as well? Perhaps, but we all know, look, as a footballer, you're going to want to play for your country. If you're called up by your country, especially Jesus, who hasn't scored for a long time for Brazil, whose spot is up for grabs with Brazil. Richarlison's injured at the moment. He's probably not going to sit there and think, you know what, I'm going to turn this down. You saw what happened with Gabriel the other day when he turned down a link up, didn't he? Because of the birth, he wanted to be there for the birth of his child, and suddenly Gabriel wasn't in the squad for the next few squads because of that. So he will have seen that and thinking, well, if I turn this opportunity down, maybe it's going to really impact my chances of staying with the national team, getting called up again for the national team. So although there is a bit of player responsibility potentially on this, I don't think the player should be in the position or being put in the position where he has to make a choice. I think it should be the club and the country should come together and make a sensible decision. And for me, this is not a sensible decision. This is an unnecessary risk. But that's just me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Here's one from CDL Gaming. He says, if Brazil wants to personally assess an injured player, why don't they just send a physio to England to assess him without an injured player having to travel halfway around the world? It's a very good point. I don't know the answer to it, but it's a very good point. Why didn't that happen? Rather than taking a player up and dragging him halfway around the world, why don't they send a doctor over to assess him here and then make the decision before putting him on an aeroplane? It's a really good point. And I don't have an answer to it, but it's a really good point that I thought was very much worth sharing. In slightly better news, Martin Odegaard has not gone to Norway. I thought that would probably be the case. Thought this was going to be a bit of an easier one to come to a decision on. He has stayed at Arsenal. He's not played, of course, apart from that tiny little cameo against West Ham where he scored. He was suffering from a hip injury before that. Played against West Ham, came back, looked like he was going to play against Newcastle, then was missing, hasn't played since. We've since found out now that it's because of concussion. He got smacked in the face by a ball at training on the Friday before the Newcastle game, which must have been one hell of a shot. And he's been suffering with concussion symptoms since then. And the concussion protocols the way they are now, that he can't play until for a certain amount of time until those symptoms stop. Sounds like the reason he hasn't gone to Norway now isn't down to that. It is still down to just sort of protecting that hip issue as well that he's been playing with for a long time. So yeah, sensible decision with him has been reached, and he's going to stay and work on his fitness ahead of the game against Brentford in a couple of weeks' time. You know, all the signs are that he will be fine and fit to play for that, which is good. And yeah, while there's been a bit of an unnecessary risk taken on Gabriel Jesus, it feels like an absolutely sensible decision has been taken with Martin Odegaard. And Arsenal now going to be just sort of crossing their fingers and waiting for everyone else to return. The international start tomorrow in terms of an Arsenal point of view. Trossard's playing for Belgium, or should be playing for Belgium against Serbia tomorrow. Then you've got Tomiyasu playing on Thursday, El Neni, David Raya, Carl Hein, Alex Runarsson as well. On Friday, you've got the Brazilians against Colombia. Whether Gabriel Jesus plays in that remains to be seen. It's highly doubtful. Gabriel and Martinelli, though, they will be. Then you've got Kivior playing for Poland. You've got the English boys and Jorginho for Italy. You've got Kai Havertz and all the William Saliba as well. So lots of games starting from tomorrow with the Arsenal players involved throughout the international break, and everyone's just going to be sitting there basically fingers crossed now, hoping that everyone comes back okay. All right, be prepared, everyone. Be prepared. It is coming tonight, and it is going to be one big propaganda show. I am fully expecting it. Howard Webb with Michael Owen, referee, mic'd up the show and the audio from Arsenal versus Newcastle. Arsenal apparently have been warned that it's going to come, which makes me laugh. Why do they need to be warned that it's going to come? We all know what's going to happen. It's going to be glossed over. Michael Owen's going to ask no questions, really. And it's Howard Webb is just going to have his hour of primetime propaganda, which will be all well and good. And I'm sure all the media big hitters will probably jump on afterwards and crow about how, oh, look at this, look how open Howard Webb's being. This is fantastic for the game. This is what we want to see. With the audio proves that they were right to come to the decision that they did, which is all a load of rubbish. We know it's a load of rubbish. It was a foul. It'll always be a foul. It always has been a foul. It always will be a foul. It was a foul when Bukayo Saka did it at the weekend. It was rightly penalised as a foul when he did that. And it was the exact same thing. Yet Gabriel's wasn't a foul. Bukayo Saka's was. Go figure. And yeah, no matter what Howard Webb says, no matter what the audio says, and the whole, oh, they've come to the right conclusion. No, they didn't. It was a foul. We all know it was a foul. Just like we all know Bruno should have been sent off for his forearm smash, that somehow basically the law has been rewritten in the face of this, where as long as you can walk around smacking someone in the back of the head with your forearm, it's fine. It's fine. It wasn't an elbow, so it's fine. So we can all do that now in every single game that we play from now until eternity. As long as you don't smack someone with the elbow, you're fine. You don't need to get sent off. So go on, walk around, smash someone in the back of the head with a forearm. So I'm sure that will come up in there as well. And maybe they will say that he was lucky not to get sent off, just as Kai Havertz was probably lucky not to get sent off for his foul as well. But yeah, the rewriting of the rule book since this incident at Newcastle is just, as I'm sure you're all aware from the videos that I've recorded last week, just left me slightly bemused by the whole thing and slightly lacking of confidence in the whole thing and the whole VAR process. And whatever Howard Webb talks about tonight, whatever all the big media accounts come up with afterwards in agreement and hailing how open and honest the whole thing was. Just see it for what it is, just a load of propaganda. It always will be, and it will continue to be. Anyway, nice little rant just to pretty much end today's show. Just a quick one here, and we will talk about this, I'm sure, myself and James Benj, given his trip to Bayer Leverkusen to watch Granit Xhaka in action. This one from 23362 says, "Hi, Charles. Do you think maybe Arteta made a mistake not convincing Xhaka to at least give him one more season? Every time I've watched the Arsenal this season, I can't help but feel this is a Xhaka team. We are methodical and control orientated and a bit slower, which I like, instead of the frantic football we played at times last season, which he thrived in. I believed he would have been even better in this team." Yes, I absolutely believe he would have been better in this team. I honestly think Arsenal win the title this season if Granit Xhaka is still here. In terms of, do I think it was a mistake from Arteta? I don't think you can really call it a mistake. Arteta convinced Xhaka to stay basically for like 3 out of the last 3 seasons when there was big chances that Granit Xhaka was going to go, and Arteta's convinced him to stay on each occasion. This time, Xhaka's will to leave was a little bit stronger. He wanted to go for a few different reasons, and it was hard for Arsenal to stand in his way when he had come to that decision, especially when they got good money for him, when he was going to be out of contract very, very soon, and given his age. So I think ultimately Arsenal just decided this was the time they had to sanction his request to leave. So I'm not sure you can really label it as an Arteta mistake, but I wish that a different decision had been reached, I have to admit, and that he had stayed, because looking at how things are shaping up this season, looking at where the fact that Arsenal have been completely unable to replace that Granit Xhaka type hole in their team, and that the fact that Kai Havertz thing just hasn't worked so far and isn't showing any signs that it is going to work, then yes, I absolutely miss him. And I think he would have been fantastic in this side, and Arsenal would have been a hell of an even better proposition than they already are right now had he stayed. So yeah, that's my answer to that one. All right, that's it from me, everyone. Thank you very much for your time. As always, like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. Probably do my normal show in the morning, and then Inside Arsenal Extra Time with James Benj will go out at some point later on in the evening. Until then, have a very good day all. I'll speak to you very, very soon.